using the moon deck. And what I do to start the class off is I go through and I show each of the cards. So it gives you an opportunity to tune into your intuition. So this is card number 1 for the first reading. And I'm going to show them a few times so you can just see if you feel, sense any sort of a difference. Card number 2. And ultimately what you're looking for is if your intuition tells you which reading to maybe pay extra special attention to, or what area of life it may apply to if it's not coming through specifically in the reading. Card number 1. And the reason I'm covering them and keeping them in my periphery is because when I do these readings, I always start psychically and I do them using my intuition. And then I receive the little instruction of when to flip the card over. And so you will see my reaction to flipping the card over in real time. So I use cards to supplement the psychic readings that I'm doing. This is card number 2. And that's just how I've always done it. I am not even really sure why, other than I just was guided to do it that way. I've continued to do it that way, and it has worked out very well. But yeah, it's not something that I'm aware of other people doing. Oftentimes they like pull the cards and just like flip them all over. I do sometimes have that they get intuited into a certain spread. So if you go to my YouTube channel, you can see I have previous sample readings from classes like today. And sometimes it comes up in like a, 2, maybe 3 card spread. This is card number 1. So the experience always varies depending on the person, the format. For the collective readings, I usually do 2 readings, and they either have 1 card each, or maybe one of the readings has 2 cards. I don't think I've had more than that. I don't think I've ever had a 2 and 2. So yeah, if you're curious about kind of understanding more of my reading style, these are great classes to attend. And I also have a lot of resources to look at on my YouTube channel. So this is card number 2, and just please pop in the chat if you felt any sort of a difference. If you felt drawn to 1 or 2, just toss that number in the chat. You can also say both, and you can also share how the information came through for you. I just got the word weightlessness, and then I was seeing it's as if someone is like sitting in a chair, but the chair is clouds, and they're floating and drifting upward. We are aspiring to experience, live in this state of weightlessness, of levity, presence, I guess. But it's mostly, honestly, for some people, it feels like I want to feel lighter, and that doesn't necessarily involve like focusing on the present moment or like being fully aware of my surroundings. For some people, it can kind of tinge toward to like the blissful ignorance of I just need to not know or be aware of things for just like a hot minute, because all that I can see around this person is just the sky and the clouds. Like there's nothing else that's there and visible. It feels like it's like vacation or staycation, like something where you can do a detox. So it could just be, I keep getting, it doesn't necessarily have to be a full day, but it could be like a 4 to 6 hour block where you are technology free, where you are on do not disturb. So you're not getting texts, not getting calls, like nothing. Even TV, like you're not watching videos or movies or shows, like nothing, like no screen, no input from anything outside of you in the present moment, but in a way that allows you to also disconnect at the same time. So you don't have anything. It's like this experience of like not having anything incoming. It doesn't mean that you're just laying around and not like taking anything in. I'm trying to like, could you like read? Because obviously, depending on the book, that can be information incoming. if it's fictional, if it's fantasy, if it's feels whimsical in some way, it feels like escapist. It almost becomes the same as like if you had someone over and you were hanging out with someone, they could tell you stories, and we're trying to avoid hearing real stories. That's like, for whatever reason, this detox block that we're having, like a 4 to 6 hour block, with the option of, if you particularly take to it, that you can make this something that's recurring. We're testing that out this week. We're seeing like what that experience is like, and then able to prescribe ourselves with how often we want to do some version of this experience going forward. Being tempted to split it. Like, let me do like 2 hours this day and 2 hours this other day, and that will get me to 6. And that is not the point. The point is that it's 4 to 6 hours. Like, it's going straight for a longer period of time. It's about the endurance of the withdrawal. All right, so we have the breathe card. The rhythm of my breath directs the rhythm of my life. So this is really about like a breath work. So what I think is interesting here is the visuals that we were getting were floating, like up in the clouds. The whimsy was the word that kept coming through. If you're someone who in that block wants to have a breathwork practice, or you want to just do that throughout the week, we're having a lot of plug and play popping up here. So depending on the person, where you're at, how badly you need the detox and the energetic reset, because that's what breath work can allow for us, is to just, in a very short period of time, clear, calm, release. And that really is what we're trying to do overall. I'm seeing some people building up. So as an example, let's say you pick Friday to be your day where you're going to do that detox block. That starting today, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 days, you do breath work, and you do it for slightly longer each day. And then you have, so it feels like it's steps leading there. So that might be something that's particularly appealing to someone. So it gives you this feeling of it being like a challenge, or so it's not as hard to just do the detox, because, and I'm not saying that you're doing breath work and it's leading up. So like on Thursday that you're doing 3 hours of breath work. No, but the idea is about giving yourself a little bit of lead time and training for being in the quiet without stimulation, and just kind of you and yourself and connecting to your energy. So if you have a little bit of like an appetizer of that before, it can make it a little bit easier. But also, this is just about the training. This is about you like working through to create this space for yourself where you can just, again, be present, but not be inundated. And also the weightlessness. It's like releasing the heaviness, like getting that out of our system, which includes up here, what's happening in our mind. Obviously, the biggest obstacle is, can you get 4 to 6 hours by yourself? And that might be the biggest hurdle and challenge for people, like especially I think of people that have young kids. Like, you might not have that block to yourself. Or some of that might just be like at night, and depending on how tired you are, you might just fall asleep. You could do quote unquote anything during this time, as long as you're not having new information coming in. So if you wanted to sit there and you wanted to journal, or you wanted to reflect or take inventory on things that you're doing or not doing, or people you're spending time with or not, information that you're consuming or not, media, social media consumption or not, great. There's no issue with that, because it's just about nothing new coming in. Doesn't mean that you can't reflect. Okay, so what I'm seeing here is somebody looking down into really shallow, maybe like puddle of water, and they have a magnifying glass. It's like they're looking at the microorganisms, like they're looking at the algae, and they're looking at the tiny little, like, Kind of looks like a lily pad. I'm getting like frog and lily pad situation, but super tiny for whatever reason. So they're looking down at the small ecosystem that is forming. This is about like the finer details, because then I would think, why didn't we just get like a book or like footnotes or something? Is it about like an emphasis of connection to nature? I'm getting that it's about the presence again. So it seems like we have both of these readings that are trying to connect us to the present moment, but in very different ways. So this one is trying to look at the micro level, but it feels compassionate. It doesn't feel really intense. Like we're trying to study, we're trying to research, we're trying to find like the right thing to do and like get information. We're still being separated from information in this reading as well. We're looking, but there's a curiosity in it. So if in the first reading we're talking about whimsy, this is like the curiosity, the compassion, like the openness, like we feel open. Difference between wanting to understand how something works and how something is, or how to be. If you were, as an example, out on a walk somewhere and you look at that tree and you go, I wonder how long that tree's been here. You don't need to do a research project to figure out how long that tree has been there, if you could even find that information out. But it's about, again, something that calls you to the present, but allows you to tap into curiosity, connection, but without the information actually coming in. We feel like we're threading a needle, definitely with this one. 2 to 5 minutes every day this week. This doesn't even honestly feel like you need to take longer. Anyone who can afford to take longer could just do the first reading. That's how it's coming in. It's about remembering that our mind is a sponge. So of course, like we want to learn new things. We want to, and that's why we have like, social media, videos and algorithms. They're designed because we're seeking to receive or see something and have like the stimulus. So it's directly appealing to this tendency. Those structures, those components that we have in our modern day society are like hijacking it in a way, or they're overstimulating it. And it's important to remain curious, remain interested in asking questions and being open, but that we don't have to understand everything. We can observe, we can still be curious, we can play with ideas, but that we don't have to make them actionable. We don't have to like then go do something with that. And that feels like that's really the healing practice of like, can I just engage with questions? Can I engage with the present moment? Can I engage with wonder, but not have to make it transactional and make it actionable? Can I just have it be? Right. So the card that we got is the guidance card. I am on the right path and divinely guided. So what stands out for me from this card, one of the main messages for this second reading was about how we don't need to make something happen. We don't need to do something. When we're divinely guided, it's just like we're in this river. We're just there. Oh, I also like that we got water imagery because it was originally water, like a little pond. We're just going with the flow. We're understanding, like we'll be nudged. Something will come forward and can inform us about action that we could take, but we don't need to seek out the action. We don't need to seek out the opportunity making. What did we do when we were kids? What's this? What's that? We can do a little bit of that this week, and then we can have things drop in. This is training. This is training. We're just doing this mindfulness practice a little bit every day this week. And depending on you, depending on how much of a reset you need, will dictate how soon guidance could come through. And also depending on your situation, how big picture that guidance is. The guidance could be something that's small, but it's about the reconnection. So maybe you're someone who you don't feel like you've been connected to your intuition or spirit team if you have one, or signs. And so it might require a little bit more in order to start receiving. For other people, maybe you've worked the muscle, but it's just getting a little bit back online. And others, maybe you just have like a slight block or something because, again, you've been distracted, you're frazzled, you're focused too much on how do I see the path forward? How do I see what to do next? And it's like, we don't always need to know what to do next and understand. Or again, we're avoiding trying to understand this week. We don't need to understand. We just are being asked to be curious. This was like people watching or something. If you're out and about and you like pick a person, that does not feel like what this is. It's not like, let me ask questions about, I wonder who that person is. No. Things in nature, art, buildings, architecture, towns, history, just things that exist and have existed long before you. The territory around technology, because one could say, oh, like, well, how does my keyboard work? And maybe somebody's like asking that kind of a question. But again, like that kind of a question, it's something you could then go Google or search online and like get the answer to that. That's not the energy we're tapping into. We're not trying to ask questions that we actually can have answered immediately, because that's tapping into, but I want to know what this means and I want to know which way to go, and we're trusting that that will come for us. They're trying to connect some different wires in our brains so that we can approach things in a slightly different way. So it is directly preparing us to then, like in this case, to be open, to be able to receive. So then it can help with some of these questions that we do have about our lives and what we have next. But it allows us to just like step out of that a little bit, step out of like the stress of wanting to understand and wanting to know what to do. Reading number 1, we had this idea of weightlessness. We were sitting in a chair made of clouds and we're floating up into the sky, focusing on detoxing this week. So being in the present moment, but not in one where we are receiving information. We are present in that we are fully with ourselves, creating space, and tapping into whimsy is something that was coming through. So this means blocking off a 4 to 6 hour window straight in one sitting. No technology, no screens, no phones, no texting, no calling, no hanging out with someone, because of the fact that what we are trying to avoid is new information coming in, including storytelling about something that is real and present and could happen to you, or is happening to you, or is happening around you, or in the collective. If in this time you want to read, the recommendation was reading something that was more in the fantasy realm, something that could not actually happen to you. And of course, you can do other activities. We didn't talk about this before, but it could be crafting, so many different options there. You could do some journaling prompts, reflection, you could meditate, you could do physical exercise. Those are all things that you could do in the present moment, and that would also connect you to your breath. So that was the card, because now we have the limited window here because of the power outage. I'll have to put this in my front of my face so that you can see it up close for just a minute. But the card that we had was the breathe card, the rhythm of my breath. Directs the rhythm of my life. So we are in this detox practice. Oh, I didn't even mention this before. So when we are breathing, Just think about that. When we're breathing, there's so much that we are breathing in. We're trying to breathe in oxygen, but we have some air pollution. This is a great analogy. So we have things that are coming in, and we're exhaling the CO2. We're exhaling waste, the toxin that we don't need, that our body doesn't need. And that's part of this practice, this idea. And separate from that, if you wanted to have a breathwork practice this week, you could do it on the off days. You could do it as a ramp up. So let's say you start today and it's Monday, and each day leading up to the day that you choose for your 4 to 6 hour block, you do slightly more time so that you are training your mind, you're training your body, because that is a significant portion of what we are doing this week is how can we recalibrate. We could journal, we could exercise, we could be crafty, we could, yeah, I was getting like, oh, could we listen to music and dance? If we're dancing, sure, but not like new music or music that we could relate to that's telling a story. Like, again, it's the same thing. If we're trying to limit anything that would be placing us in reality or something that we directly could be connected to as like a lived experience, because we're just trying to exist. We're trying to exist in the present moment. We're trying to detox and let go of the things that have been on our mind or overwhelming us or overstimulating us in some way. And we're clearing out those toxins. Now, for reading 2, we had a little magnifying glass on a lily pad, frog, shallow pond situation. We're looking at the microorganisms. So we're tapping into openness, compassion, and curiosity. So that is the main word for the second reading. We are being curious. And similar to the first reading, we're also restricting some of the intake that we have, because this curiosity is not to understand. It's not for research purposes. We're not studying this frog and then lily pad. We're not studying the frog and the lily pad. We're just looking at them. We are being asked to ask questions, but very specific kinds of questions, not ones to get information or to understand what something is or how something works. Rather, to ask about, like, how is that existing? The point is that the kinds of questions we're asking, we're trying to ask ones that are not something that we could just go look up and get a clear answer to. So I was giving an example earlier about if you're walking outside somewhere and you see a tree and you're like, I wonder how long that tree has been there. It would be really hard to identify how long that specific tree has been in some random park or on a sidewalk somewhere. Those are the kinds of questions we're trying to sit in, ones that we can't necessarily get an answer to, and that's not the point, because this week ahead for the second reading is encouraging us to train our mind away from asking for questions that give us a clear answer, give us clear actions, or are transactional in any way. So we are spending 2 to 5 minutes every single day asking these bigger picture questions, practicing being curious without the expectation of instructions or information that we could do anything with. And the card that we have on these same guidelines is the guidance card. I am on the right path and divinely guided. So we are recognizing that we don't need to know the way forward. We don't need to understand what's next and what to do next and what to look out for. We can just practice asking bigger questions that allow us to be here in the now, to be open to receive. So then that information, the guidance from signs, your spirit team, through dreams, through waking hours, can come through. But we're not forcing anything. We're taking the pressure off of like needing to know what to do. That's the cycle we're trying to break this week. What I so appreciated about these cards is the visuals for the first reading. We were floating up in the clouds. So I love that we had a card that has air imagery. And the second one, we were looking at a small body of water, and then we were in water here. So we are practicing whimsy, levity, healthy detachment from the present moment, reducing overstimulation. And here we are practicing curiosity, openness, and kind of releasing the control of like, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to understand. And those are pretty important lessons to learn. And of course, the differences in how we're learning them. First reading, extended period of time in one block with the option to do breath work on the off days, to do breath work leading up, or to include breath work in that session. You have 4 to 6 hours. You're like, well, I could sit here and I could do a meditation practice for a half hour. That'd be helpful. That will eat up some of the time. That's an option. Or you could do it on the other days. And then for this one, it's a little bit every day. It's like taking your vitamins. It's like just a small amount, a small dose each day to help with just adjusting and reframing so that we can release and open ourselves up to receive the guidance that we do want, but that we need to understand we can't force. Depending on your schedule, depending on how busy you are, maybe you're someone you're like, oh, I love the sound of doing reading number 1, but this is not my schedule. And I could not possibly do this week. I don't have a day that I can dedicate 4 to 6 hours straight to do the types of, allowed activities. So you could, by default, again, by choice, you don't have to do either of these, but if you would like to participate, then going into that second one. You may be thinking, oh, one of these sounds nicer than the other. If your schedule doesn't allow, it might kind of knock that out of contention. But you still get a significant benefit from both of these because both of them are supporting you in shifting how you operate. And I mentioned this earlier. Let's say you're someone who loves the idea of doing reading number 1. You're like, I don't have a day with 4 to 6 hours this week. If you want to try this another time, you can just try this in the future. Maybe you're like, this is the worst week for me to try to do this, but I could do it next week or the week after. Great. If you want to try it out later, you can try it out later, and this just plants the seed and gives you the idea. And in the interim, if this is something that works better for your schedule, try that. I am getting something for people. You hear this and go, oh, well, that sounds easy. I'll do that. But you actually could make this work. And so it's challenging you. You could do this. It's about recalibrating your priorities to make this happen and not setting the bar so low for yourself that you're like, I'll just do the low hanging fruit. I'll do the easy one. 2 minutes a day. Great. I'll do that one. That's a shortcut. So if you happen to fall into that camp, this is this is the instruction of like, we are trying to put in some important work this week. Like if the people that like literally want to do this genuinely are like, I would love to do this. This would be so amazing. I know I need this. And you're being practical about your schedule and yeah, I have kids running around. I have these appointments, I have these other things. Like I straight up don't have this block and I'm probably going to fall asleep trying to do this. Then you just know yourself enough. That's very different than just being like trying to do the easier option. So be very reflective in if you choose to do either of these activities, like being honest with yourself around, are you trying to choose the easy way out or what you think will actually be the most healing and supportive for you, what you need the most right now.